Good afternoon, dear colleagues, once again, and thank you for your interest in the funding opportunities provided by the Transatlantic Foundation in this SERF program with the abbreviation PROTEUS, which stands for the very long name Protecting EU Values and Fundamental Rights Through Public Participation and Civil Society Assistance in Central Europe. Please allow me to introduce myself and my most esteemed colleagues. My name is Daniel Hegedűs. I am leading the Central Europe program in our organization. I also would like to introduce you Veronika Zimova, who is the key coordinator for our PROTEUS programming, and our colleagues Dimitar Keranov and Ivana Kopachka, who are covering Bulgaria and Poland in this program, are also with us. Just very briefly as an introduction regarding the run of the show, in the first 20 to 30 minutes, we would like to provide you an overview and introduction into the SERF program, into the Transatlantic Foundation or work in Central Europe, but especially to the 3 open call for proposals, what we have, and also introduce you to certain technical details which are specific to these grants. And after a good half an hour, we just simply would like to open the Q&A and provide you the opportunity to ask questions. And we obviously will try to answer this question according to our best knowledge. We are covering 8 countries with this program, which appears to be a lot. These countries are Poland, Czechia, Slovakia, Hungary, not in an alphabetical order, but in a geographical order, coming from the north to the south, Romania, Bulgaria, Croatia, and Slovenia. Within the program, there is the opportunity to submit the applications in all these national languages, and obviously also in English. Unfortunately, due to certain logistical constraints, we cannot offer this information call in all of these national languages, so it will be held in English. But if you prefer to ask questions in your national language, then feel free to submit questions in Polish, Czech, Slovak, Hungarian, Bulgarian. These are the languages what we can cover now in this team, and we will also try to answer these questions both in written form or potentially also in person. But in the Q&A, you will have the opportunity to freely contribute in English. The event will be recorded because obviously for information purposes we would like to upload it to our YouTube page. But the Q&A part will be obviously non-recorded to allow a free exchange of information and questions. And having said that, as an introduction regarding the housekeeping rules, just please allow me to start my presentation. As I already mentioned, potentially PROTEUS is part of the European Union's Citizens' Equality, Rights and Values program, with the abbreviation SERF. This is a directly funded and directly managed programming of the European Commission, designed to support equality in the European Union, citizens' engagement and participation, fight violence, and to promote the Union values. And SERF is practically belonging to this Union values part. The PROTEUS is belonging to this Union values part of the SERF programming. Was selected last year as a re-granting mechanism to support civil society organizations in the 8 project countries, what I mentioned. In accordance to the goals set for the SERF programming, the main aim of PROTEUS is also to strengthen civil society organizations, that they are able better protect, promote, and raise awareness of European values and fundamental rights, which above all, as they are anchored in Article 2 of the Treaty on the European Union, the democracy, the rule of law, human rights, equality of men and women, and the non-discrimination against persons belonging to minorities. We would like to achieve these aims through two fundamental values, or with the help of two toolkits. One is grant making in the program countries, and the second one is offering capacity building, tailor-made capacity building to new, less established civil society organizations, or in certain cases even to civic activists and civic groups, with the help of our national implementation partners. When it comes to our grants offered in the program countries, without going in the details of the many interventions we have, I think we can just summarize these interventions thematically in four categories. The first relates to political and public participation and deliberation. Through different projects, we are supporting democratic participation, public deliberation, and inclusion. We would like to support to strengthen civil society organizations' resilience to shrinking spaces, make them more resilient to potential political or other non-political but public form of intimidation, especially in those countries where certain forms of democratic decline, other countries perhaps certain forms of autocratization has been present over the past couple of years. We would like to strengthen, first and foremost, human rights and anti-corruption watchdogs, which are protecting and promoting EU values and fundamental rights, especially in peripheral and rural areas in the program countries. And we also very much focus on supporting any form of civic activism in peripheral and rural areas. Please just allow me also to say a couple of words about the Transatlantic Foundation for the sake of transparency, because we understand that in some case it might be a bit confusing that this program is running under the label of the Transatlantic Foundation, while you can practically access all of the information on the website of the German Marshall Fund of the United States. The explanation is very simple. The Transatlantic Foundation is the European and EU registered arm and legal personality of the German Marshall Fund of the United States, which is headquartered in Brussels, and based on the agreement between the two organizations, two legal entities, the Transatlantic Foundation is trading as the German Marshall Fund of the United States. So that's the reason why you can access the information on the GMF website, or potentially the call for proposal related information is distributed or disseminated by GMF social media accounts. The two organizations are separate in the legal entity, but practically identical in their operations. I very briefly mentioned the 8 project countries. Here, once again, I just would like to also mention our local implementation partners who obviously provide the local knowledge in this programming and also are primarily responsible for the implementation of the capacity building work packages in PROTEUS. So if you think that you could be also interested, aside of applications to grant making, in participating to various capacity building programs, or you would like to receive capacity building support, please reach out to our national implementation partners in the individual program countries, check their websites, contact them, and they will be more than delighted to inform you about the different opportunities they offer in their countries. So very briefly, just to enumerate our partners, it's Sofia platform in Bulgaria, Serenio in Croatia, the VIA Foundation in Czechia, the Power of Humanity Foundation and Verség Erejével in Hungary, Shipyard Foundation Stocznia in Poland, the Research Center for Public Participation CERE in Romania, Partners for Democratic Change PDCS in Slovakia, and the Slovak platform, last but not least, in Slovenia. And after this brief introduction to the Transatlantic Foundation, to our PROTEUS programming, please also just allow me in a couple of minutes to provide some basic information about our 3 open call for proposals regarding their scope, regarding the list of eligible activities, and obviously also the countries and organizations who are eligible to these calls. You can see on the screen the titles of these call for proposals, and I very briefly just would like to deep dive into them. Our first objective has the title Enhancing Citizen Participation and Public Deliberation and Democratic Processes. I think the objective of this call for proposal is more or less self-explanatory. We run this call for proposal in all 8 project countries, what we cover, and the available budget for this funding line or intervention is 300,000 euro. Concerning the distribution of the available budget, obviously we are striving to reach certain geographical balance when it comes to grant decisions and the distribution of this funding, but obviously it is deeply influenced also by the number of applications what we receive from the individual program countries, obviously also the quality of the applications what we receive. So obviously these influence the final grant decisions and the final distributions of the fund, which is available, as I mentioned, for all 8 program countries without any hard funding budget lines for the individual states. Here you can see the list of eligible activities, which in these programs are exclusive according to the EU regulations. So please take a look on these eligible activities and consider whether the project what you are considering, you would like to pitch to us, can fit even broadly to one of these categories. I just would like to go through on all of these points. So first and foremost, we would like to support inclusive online and offline participatory processes, frameworks, inclusive formats, may that be organized either in local level, regional level, national level in the countries, or potentially even in a cross-border format with the participation of organizations from several EU member states. Here, I think the key element for us is just to see new forms which allow EU citizens to pursue or to participate in a more active format in public life. May that be public consultations, may that be the joint discussion of public issues, so that's deliberation, or new formats, how they can really participate in the formulation of their interests. Practically, it's a very broad category, and in our understanding, a very large spectrum of potential projects are within the focus of this activity. We also very much would like to support inclusive online and offline issue-driven, community-based dialogue formats and deliberative platforms. They can relate to any potential local or regional issue which is just important for a community. May they relate either to environment issues, local social issues which are important for the community, with an education aspect, with an inclusion aspect. Concerning the third activity, we also are very much eager to support awareness raising, outreach, communication, or public information campaigns, primarily in social media or in online forms, but it shouldn't be necessarily exclusively online, which shed lights on issues important for local, regional communities, or potentially also national level. We are very much eager to support the creation of coalitions and partnerships between CSOs, which are striving for a common public goal again, either in local, regional, or national, or cross-border context. We also have more or less a Jolly Joker less activity. So if you still think that you cannot really fit the project you are planning to any of these 4 eligible activity I mentioned, but you are certain that it has a clear civic engagement or participation component or deliberation component, please feel free to submit the application. And this last eligible activity, I think, is formulated broadly enough that we can accommodate your application. Our second open call for proposal is titled Supporting Civil Society Organizations' Resilience in Shrinking Spaces. This support is eligible only in 5 countries. These are in alphabetical order: Bulgaria, Croatia, Hungary, Poland, and Romania. This is not an arbitrary selection from our end. These are the countries which, according to mainstream democracy measuring programs, and first and foremost by Freedom House's Nations in Transit, what we use as a benchmark, are not falling in the category of consolidated democracies anymore. And these are the countries where potential intimidation of civil society organizations or pressure on civil society organizations were, in some cases occasionally, in some cases frequently and widely reported over the past years. And in these organizations, even on project basis, we would like to support civil society organizations to update their organizational structures, their internal procedures, that they can adapt to these new realities, and they can build stronger resilience against all of these challenges which are present in countries where shrinking spaces is practically part of the everyday operations of civil society organizations. The budget line for the 5 countries is 450,000 euro, and the eligible activities are, on the one hand, and I think that's key because it's practically a self-organized capacity building for the organizations on project basis. We are happy to support organizational and operational development projects that aims at a more effective adaptation to any sort of negative changes in the operational environment, which is caused by the shrinking spaces phenomenon. So if you would like to make your accounting system more resilient, because, for example, an organization was intimidated by the tax authority over the past years, or by any other public authorities, or just you would like to increase your compliance with national laws and regulations just to avoid any opportunity of putting pressure on the organization, all of these projects fall under the category of this first eligible activity. The second eligible activity is to organizing trainings which are increasing the IT security skills of CSO staffs, and which are making the civil society organizations more resilient to any form of potential cyber attacks, cyberbullying, or putting pressure on the organization in the online sphere. The third eligible activity is conducting trainings, which are increasing the psychological and emotional resilience of CSO staffs to any forms of intimidations or psychological pressure. And the fourth eligible activity is to organize awareness-raising campaigns or building coalitions that may help the adaptation of CSOs to a new operational environment characterized by shrinking spaces, for example, through knowledge and experience sharing, or developing joint responses, joint answers to the shrinking spaces phenomenon. So the circle of available opportunities is again very broad in this case. And last but not least, I'm coming to the third call for proposal, and practically this will be also the end of my part in the presentation before I pass the floor to my colleague Veronica. This call has the title "Strengthening the Presence of Human Rights and Anti-Corruption Watchdogs in Peripheral and Rural Areas." The available budget for this intervention is again €300,000, and all 8 program countries covered by PROTEUS are eligible to the funding. And with this intervention, we practically would like to fulfill twofold goals. First, support grassroots anti-corruption and human rights initiatives, watchdogs, even new organizations which were established or are coming from peripheral and rural areas, so are not necessarily part of very often capital city-centered community of watchdog organizations, but have their headquarters, have their practically basis outside of capital cities or larger urban centers. This is one track, and the other track is that we would like also to support the extension of the work of larger and more established watchdog organizations to peripheral and rural areas in the countries where they operate. Eligible activities here are organizing awareness-raising campaigns, outreach activities, communication and public information events in peripheral and rural areas by these types of organizations, organization of civic platforms and civic dialogues addressing the topics of transparency, anti-corruption, protection of human rights and fundamental values, again, in peripheral and rural areas, building coalitions and partnerships among civil society or organizations, coordinating their activities among each other and potentially also with other stakeholders, which include public or private sector entities, regarding watchdog operations again in peripheral and rural areas, conducting watchdog and monitoring activities in these geographies, conducting advocacy activities to influence local or regional policy or decision-making in these rural and peripheral geographies, or the organization of operational development projects that aim at extending the presence and activities of established watchdogs to peripheral and rural areas. We both support the networking of watchdogs coming from that areas and the networking of established watchdogs in the capital cities and watchdogs in peripheral and rural areas. So practically, these would be our 3 open call for proposals to which you can submit your applications until July 15. We are very much looking forward to any of your questions related to our organizations and especially to these 3 call for proposals in a couple of minutes. But before we would switch to the Q&A, I also would like to give the floor to Veronica, who will again deep dive you in further technical details of the application process. So Veronica, please go ahead. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Thank you for all your insightful comments and explanations. Now I would move on to, as you said, the technical part, which is maybe less interesting, but also very important. So moving on to eligibility criteria, the eligible applicants are non-profit making, non-governmental organizations and civil society organizations established in one of the project countries. Please keep in mind that that the country is relevant under the given call for proposal. Like we had in the call for shrinking spaces, only 5 countries are eligible. Then your activities may last from 6 to 24 months. The project activities must take place in one of the project countries or more. We also consider cross-border activities with other EU member states as eligible. You may apply for a grant of 10,000 to 25,000 euros for single country projects and 10,000 to 40,000 euros for cross-border projects. As this program is financed by a EU program, it's really important that you are compliant with the rights and values under the EU treaties and the Charter of Fundamental Rights. And that's the reason why you're actually signing the Declaration of Honor as part of your application process. So Dania, please, next slide. And we would like to ask you to send the Declaration of Honor, the application form, and the budget to our email address, engaging Central Europe, engaging CE @gmfus.org, latest by midnight, July 15th. And we will really appreciate if you can state the cause reference number in your email. It makes it way easier for us to sort out all the applications. I do believe there will be many, so fingers crossed. Moving on to the next slide, please. Danielle? Okay, maybe it's just the internet connection, so it's lagging a little bit. Now I would like to just make a few notes on the application form and the budget form. So I would really like to emphasize that it's important to work on the logic of your project. So set up the overall goal carefully and trying to be as realistic as possible. Then break down that goal to a specific objective or objectives. It's fine when it's only one. And these objectives need to be broken down to activities and activities into results. I would like to ask you, please define at least one or two qualitative results. And we also have a set of mandatory quantitative results. Mandatory in terms of that they need to be defined. It doesn't mean that you have to work on all of them. But yet, in case one of the result is not applicable to your activity, just write a 0 in the application form. Moving on to the budget form. Thank you. Here, I would like to make two notes. When you are calculating the personal cost, please specify the engagement of your employee on the project. So if someone is working full-time, that's 100%. When part-time, it's 50%. The unit definition, I would recommend you to use a month for employees and a day for one-time hires, for example, experts, trainers, speakers on your activities. And when we are talking about price per unit, please keep in mind it's important that you calculate the total labor cost, including all the mandatory contribution of the employer, meaning health insurance, social insurance, and so on. So not the gross salary. The total labor cost, not the gross salary. For example, you have a full-time employee working on the project in 75%. That means the 75% of his or her salary is covered by the project and the rest is covered from other resources. In that case, you will calculate it. So the unit will be a month and the price per unit will be 75% of the total monthly labor cost. So try to keep this in mind. It will make your and our life way easier to work with the budget. A second note is that there is a maximum of 7% of total requesting grant amount can be on administrative cost. Again, if you are co-financing this project, in that case, it's the grant amount. So to keep that in mind, 7% of the total requested grant amount. Administrative cost is utilities, office rent, and I don't know, your accountant and so on. Next slide, please. And I would like to stay with the budget a little bit longer, just to mention that a part of that 7% limit on administrative cost, we don't have any other major regulations. So you're quite free in elaboration of your budget. What you need to keep in mind, though, is that the budget needs to be relevant and cost effective. You can go back, but thank you, Danielle. Because it's one of our main award criteria, your proposals will be evaluated on. Another key criteria is the relevance of the action. So once again, when you are working on your setting up your goal, specific objectives and activities, keep the objective of the call in mind, and also the eligible activities under that call. We also really appreciate innovative ideas. But again, if something is working and you have some good practices and lessons learned, there is no need to reinvent the wheel. So you just carry on with the good work what you do, and we like to see that in practice. Overall, the highest number of points you can get for your proposal is 42. And in order to be considered eligible for a grant, you need to get at least 25 points. Oh, your proposal needs to get at least 25 points. Next slide, please. I would talk about the timeline. Thank you. We will do our best to evaluate all the proposals by the first half of August. And then we will communicate the results to you and publish them on our website in second half of August. Although the earliest start date of the projects is 1st of September, we would like to advise you to go for a later starting date. That would give us more time to go through the grant agreement, making sure that that we are both on the same page and we understand all the obligations under the grant agreement. So the grant agreement should be signed end of August or during September. Once the grant agreement is signed, we will transfer you the grant amount in one installment. So all the whole grant, 100%. So you can carry on implementing the activities. And once your project is finalized, you will have 2 months to work on a simple narrative report and a financial expense report. Again, we want to make it easy for you, so we don't have a comprehensive financial guidelines. It's important that you follow the national legislation and your usual accounting practices. And I think that would be all from my side. Thank you.